And when I brought that to the CEO, he was over the moon. He was so excited about it. And he never came to work without that badge on. To him, he was getting backstage to his own company. And he was the leader of that. When the CEO has got the buy-in, no one is going to not do that. And he would actually question people, where's your badge?
This is a Security Weekly production. Security Weekly is a resource of Cyber Risk Alliance.
The Cybersecurity Collaborative and Wiz is proud to present CISO Stories. Each week, CISO Stories takes a deep dive on security leadership with one of the contributors to my latest book, the best-selling CISO Compass: Navigating Cybersecurity Leadership Challenges with Insights from Pioneers, as well as from other top CISOs and security thought leaders. The Cybersecurity Collaborative is a unique membership community enabling cybersecurity leaders to work together in a trusted environment. To learn more, visit securityweekly.com/CSC or visit cyberleadersunite.com. I am your host, Todd Fitzgerald, and this week we welcome John Ceraolo, Head of Information Security at Skilljar Incorporated.
Hi, Todd. Thanks for having me. Wow, that goes so far back. At the time, I was an IT manager, and I was managing VMS deck systems. And one of the things I liked the most about it was the security side of it. I thought that was kind of interesting. And then it turns out that the company I was working for was bought, and it was going to be sold off and kind of dismembered. And so I was picked up by the CIO, and he said, "What do you think about security?" And we had both been reading the book Cyberpunks, and we thought that was kind of a neat way of breaking into companies by using social engineering. So for 10 days, he let me run amok using social engineering to see if we could break into our company. And I did this over the course of 10 days and was actually able to break into 5 of the organizations, including our outsource provider, by just calling up and pretending to be the field engineer from Digital Equipment Corporation. And I got to the keys to the kingdom. I got the financial access that I needed. And that was the end of it. I said, this is the problem that we have from a security perspective. And while I was excited that I was able to do all of that, I was also a bit terrified that now all this work was in front of me to fix that. And I have never looked back since. And it's been an interesting ride and an amazing amount of things that I've seen, good and bad. So it's been a lot of fun. I wouldn't change a thing.
Yeah, I mean, social engineering is such a important part today because, we look at all the phishing campaigns and everything else. Mm-hmm. People are getting social engineered all the time. Absolutely.
It's one of the easiest things to do. Every day. Think about the influences people have on you when you meet them, telling you what's available for food that day at the restaurant, or what something costs when you pay for it at the grocery store. Are you being socially engineered, or are these the facts? And social engineers use that trust that you have in certain people, and they leverage it to their advantage. And it's sadly the easiest way in the world to compromise a user.
I mean, I see these things on that big social media platform, which I won't name, that starts with an F. That you see all these things out there where they ask you these questions that seem innocuous. Questions like, what car did you first learn to drive a stick shift in? Well, if you're over a certain age, that probably was your first car, and is that answer to that password question. But without directly asking you that question, they're extracting that information.
Yep, they do. And the funny thing about that, I teach my users as well as my personal life, I never give the right answer. If it asks me for a number, I'll give a color. If it asks me for a high school, I'll give, a boat name. I'll give, it's hard to remember those things. But if you keep a pattern of how you're going to answer certain questions, it's better than giving the truth, because no real purpose for giving the truth for those questions. There's not something that's going to hold you to. Whatever you decide the answer is what you're going to give if you're ever challenged on that again. So people can ask me all day long, but I'll tell them all the great. My first car was a Toyota. I'm still driving a Toyota derivative now. So it's kind of crazy that people will give those true answers and hold on to that dear life, because that's the things that you can easily find out from people.
Yeah, definitely. Well, you wrote a great piece for the book CISO Compass: Navigating Cybersecurity Leadership Principles with Insights from Pioneers, which you clearly were a pioneer in this space. And you talked about listening and using creativity in your security program. Could you walk us through? I think you gave such a great example of what you did.
Yeah, thank you. It was when you asked me, it seems like a long, long time ago, when you asked me for my story, it was one that I'd been telling my friends and family, the Thanksgiving dinner where you try to explain what you do, one of those types of stories. But this one actually turned out so nicely, and it was a very easy, and you could probably say there was some social engineering involved in that, but it was an easy approach to a difficult problem. So I was working for a company that really kind of fancied itself kind of a new Google type thing. It was in Boca Raton, and we were doing text messaging, and it was kind of a hip company, and the decor inside the office was really kind of cutting edge. It was wide open spaces, a lot of funky artwork, and one of the biggest things that our CEO loved was music, and he is a rock fan of all stripes, and he had guitars that were either made for him personally or that he actually got from artists. He had a Van Halen guitar. He had one that was signed by a member of U2, very much a rock guy. And that was kind of cool to go to every day. And it just made it, the whole environment was fun. The culture was great, whatnot. And so I come in as a security person. And one of the things I noticed that we don't have going on is any kind of a badge to show that you're an employee or to get you into the doors. And one of the first things that happened when they moved to that building, which was a couple months before I started, was they were robbed. Somebody came in with a clipboard, and a pencil, and they were walking around during the move, and it seemed like they were legitimate. And they picked up a couple of Mac computers and walked out with them. And that, again, social engineering, that's exactly what you would do. You would look like somebody who belongs, because a clipboard, for whatever reason, brings authority to the mind. And this person just walked in, walked out. So the concept of putting badges together wasn't, looked down upon, but it needed to happen. So the culture was not one that people were going to wear badges or kind of be in that same corporate world. And I really was trying to figure out a way that I could get badges to work and be used. So I was sitting there one day and thinking about the whole theme of the company and the office and our CEO. And I thought, what if we just change that to make it a backstage pass? I'd have to give up the fact that I have to give out the company name, which I don't ever want to put on a badge in case it's lost or found by somebody bad. I'd have to give that up, but I could also create packaging around the actual access card that would have it could look like another band. It could be an actual band, or it could have some different designs. And I got the marketing team involved, and I said, can you design one for me? And they said, we won't design one, we'll design different genres of music so that people can actually select what they would like, because that would be really cool. And all they'll do is stick their regular badge inside this kind of lanyard, and they could just wear that and use that as their backstage pass. And when I brought that to the CEO, he was over the moon. He was so excited about it, and he never came to work without that badge on. To him, he was getting backstage to his own company, and he was the leader of that. When the CEO has got the buy-in, no one is going to not do that. And he would actually question people, where's your badge? And people got to choose hip hop type or rock and roll or anything they wanted as their different background. And it was much bigger, but inside of it was the actual badge that would get them indoors, and you could see their face and you could see their name. And I also made sure the first name was in larger font, because we were a first name basis company. And then below it was the last name in smaller font, so that we could keep that whole cultural thing going of doing the first name and recognizing somebody. And you could also comment about their badge instead of saying, I forgot your name. And that was a nice way of kind of getting around that particular social awkwardness that badges bring as well.
There's so many things in that you looked at the culture, even down to understanding that the person's name should be bigger because that's how we are as an organization. I just wonder how many CISOs are really tapped in to what the culture of the company is like.
Speaking for myself, I currently work for a Seattle-based company, and culture is extremely important. And fortunately, I've had those kinds of experiences in smaller companies where it is and it can go forward. And the key to that is hanging on to it and keeping that smaller company culture as you go forward. And I think a CISO has to be tapped into that. If you're not really part of the game, you're not going to get your message out, because you have to roll with the tide of what the company is doing. If you're coming in and saying, well, I've been part of a breach and you have to do this, it's more like, we do things this way. Here's another alternative we should try, because I think it'd be a little safer than what we're currently doing. And if you take that approach versus the old zeros and ones, which is how we used to be tagged. And I went through those phases too. I've been doing this for over 30 years, and I was a yes, no guy for a long time, until I realized this was not working. And then you come to this realization that it has to change. And hopefully now that so many people have had that epiphany and can bring that training and that lesson to other CISOs and folks as they come up and want to be CISOs, they'll understand that that's what you have to be. You have to be very pragmatic. And I always joke that it's a great job that there's only two people in the whole company that have to know everything. It's the CEO and you. So you really have kind of this, no pun intended, but a backstage pass into every other department and to what they're doing and to understand it, where the CEO needs to know that too. But you have to be in there from a risk perspective to say, what is it that this department is doing now that I can help with? And you really can walk around. And if you can do that within the culture, you're going to get a lot farther, and your program's going to go a lot farther too.
I know when I've mentored CISOs, I've given this advice that, if you're a new CISO in a job, that for the first 30 days, 30 to 45 days, you should not be implementing anything, because you should be listening, and you should be hearing what's going on, because what you don't know is the culture, that product, or that the way things are being done. If you start criticizing that, you don't know that could be your boss's baby, or the person you need, the stakeholder that you need to champion your efforts. That could be their baby, and you just called it ugly. And it's hard to walk back from that. And so I like the idea that you have about actually listening to what's going on in the culture of the organization.
It does help, and you will, because you're so ready to rush off. And I've done that before. I've come in, and the first 40, 45 days, I've rushed off and wanted to buy a product to solve password management issue or whatever. And because you're looking for those quick wins, right? We're always told, go for those quick wins, start to make your mark and all that. But it's really, I want to go for the more significant win that's going to do the best thing for the company. If I'm not the right fit for the job, we'll both know that soon enough. But I'd rather still wait and see before I rush off. And even I've had this conversation with my wife before. I've said, I'm going to come into a company. I'm going to actually ask to have an outsourced risk assessment later on. I want to get that done. And she says, why don't you do that? You know how to do a risk assessment. Aren't you showing that you don't know how to do one? It's like, no, I'm showing that I want an outside party to come in and do a completely independent evaluation for what my biases might be and from what the company is trying to or doesn't know that they need to be asked about. So I believe leveraging third parties for that as well, because they don't have to necessarily understand the culture. They have to come in and do a risk assessment. But I can tee that up so that the culture is ready for this outside party to come in and ask these questions. And at the end result is going to be the roadmap that we're going to go for. So I like going that way and using some experts to bring that help in, because many times I've started out, I don't have a single person working for me and no budget for the next person to come in. And I've had several jobs now where I don't have a single person, and then that will eventually come. You don't kind of jump into that and say, I need 5 more people. You don't have any proof of that. You haven't proven that you need 5 more people. It's when you show the work is there, it's easier to get that going.
The article this podcast is based upon can be viewed in the best-selling cybersecurity leadership book, CISO Compass, Navigating Cybersecurity Leadership Challenges with Insights from Pioneers. It's a very important point you made about having somebody externally coming in and doing that work. I know when I built a strategy for a large global organization, the board wanted to have 2, not just 1, but 2 different firms review my strategy to make sure it was correct. And at first I was like, well, really? I mean, you hired me to do this job. Why are you questioning my work, and it actually improved the process because there were some things that were questioned, but I also found that it was actually really nice because it validated some of the things that I was saying, and they were saying, "Oh yeah, definitely, you need to invest in these areas," and so it can be a big support for your program. And I know a lot of CISOs do that. Well, even though they could do that themselves, people want to hear from some sort of external firm for that.
That's a good point. I had that actually happen to me in my previous job. I was there for a few months, and there were some people that were rather skeptical. And so they decided to bring in a very well-respected firm to come in and evaluate me and what I knew about what was going on in the company, what I knew about security. And we had some serious, detailed conversations about all the things that I saw with the company that we needed to change, and some of the roadblocks that I had. And when they were done, at the very end of it, they said, "John needs a resource. You have to get another person to work for this guy." And that was not even on the roadmap. As I was saying, for a whole year, they were saying, "You're going to go without anybody. We'll look at someone for you in the following year." And this firm came in who was supposed to evaluate me and say, "Was this guy right or not?" That's what they hired them for. Came in and said, "Yeah, he's right. Not only that, he needs help. You've got to get him somebody." And then they came back for a second round to determine whether there was a cooperation with the senior leadership with what the security program was trying to do. And there's some very interesting results that they came back with saying, here's the people that are really resisting and causing John issues. And the program is not going to go far unless they get out of the way. And the whole long, it was something where I was like, how come this is happening to me? How come someone's being brought in to evaluate me? They hired me to do this job. In reality, it turned out to be the best thing that could possibly happen.
Yeah. All the more help. And so speaking of help, you know, in your example, you solicited the marketing department, which I think is an area many CISOs don't or forget, that marketing can help with internal efforts too.
Oh yeah, big time. Because why wouldn't they? They're trying, and HR is another one. The ones that are communicating directly and the ones that know how to communicate with the most flash are those two departments. And marketing is gonna love, they love to talk, and that's what they're paid to do. They love to promote the company. That's exactly what they're supposed to be doing. And HR is the people company, or the people department, and they're together. You can find so many great ways, like tagging on monthly newsletters that come out for the employees, throwing in a section about security, just a couple of sentences or whatever, and writing in on some of those things is really showing you're part of the team and part of the culture versus this outsider that's all the yes, no's. And I was once called the angel of death. They said whenever they got when they got an IM from me, they thought there cannot be anything good to come from what he's going to ask me. And it was never anything bad. They were just, for whatever reason, afraid. And I had to turn that around, because you can't have that be how people view you, that something bad is going to come whenever you encounter them. And leveraging those teams is really, really helpful. And they love the content. HR people will run out of things to say about, don't forget to turn in your expense reports or whatever those things, the normal things they say. So if you can provide content, they're going to be really happy about that.
And one thing I liked about your marketing example is you said that you went to them to design the badges, but then they actually came up with an idea to have different genres, or to make it into like a contest kind of thing, and that's the kind of stuff that, that's what they're good at. They're good at thinking out of those kind of things, and we don't have to think up all those things completely on our own.
Exactly. And that way it was not just John was telling everyone to have a badge. It was, look at how we do badges differently as a company, so that when guests showed up or clients showed up, they saw that we were very different in the way we took that approach. And everybody had a hand in it, saying, we designed this, and I chose this one for whatever reason. And all along, all I wanted was people to have a badge to open the doors with their pictures on it, and also so that I could know the names of people as they were coming in. And we were also, it was really nice how the ROI came out on that, when we would stop people because we saw they didn't have the badge, and it was much easier to tell. Our uniform was a collared shirt, or a short sleeve shirt and jeans. That's what everybody wore. So anybody could walk in and look like that, but without the badge, it made a huge difference.
Yeah. And I think that's a really great example of just changing the culture and at the CEO level and tapping into, I think it's just brilliant, tapping into, what is it that interests him and just, or her, and noticing those things.
Yes, it was just a stroke of luck that he advertised the kind of person and personality that he was, and to take that and that something existed like backstage passes and everybody knew what they looked like, and that just was very fortunate. But I think that you can take that and I wouldn't say twist, but you can kind of work that into other things that you need to do. I know that some companies use contests for best passwords, things of that nature, where you can make it fun, kind of gamification of things that are really, really mundane and not very fun to do. Changing your password and all those different things, and how you can come up with ways to remember them, and making your training be more exuberant than just like, and here's this annual thing we have to go through every year. I've looked at a lot of companies that have some great training that just keep it fun, and this isn't really a fun thing, but if you make it part of your day and as part of everything you do at work, as opposed to something that rides along you and stares down your neck, that's just kind of a great way to change it.
Absolutely. So this has been great, John. What sort of, final thoughts do you have for emerging CISOs, current CISOs, experienced CISOs, as they go along this journey trying to change their culture and influence it?
Well, I think you kind of mentioned it, Todd, and that is the listening part is really important. It's one of the greatest and hardest jobs in the world. You have to know an awful lot between law and technology, data, all the latest things that are going on. I read about 50 news feeds in the morning to get all the latest stories that have popped up since yesterday. And a lot of them are repetitious, but overall, you have to find out what is actually breaking out there, and keep an eye on the people that are less fortunate than you, the ones that have gone through breaches and what they're going through, what their response was, how they handle it, and keep thinking and constantly be tapping the market as to what's going on and how other people are going through those things. So that could be you one day, and have your plan ready. And so there's a lot of things that you have to have going, but, take a deep breath, because people always say, what's the one thing that keeps you up at night? Well, I sleep fine at night. If I worried and was awake every single night about the things that were going wrong in security, you're never going to sleep. There's always going to be something. Your day is going to hit you the way it hits you. I usually wake up and want to do 4 or 5 things, and maybe I don't do any of those things, but at the end of the day, as long as I can say I did what was most important to the company for that day, then it doesn't matter. Those 4 or 5 things were not that important that day. So it's really kind of just to take a breath and move forward. It's not an easy job, but it is a fun one, and it's very rewarding in that you can make a difference. And I like the fact that what I do makes a difference in people's lives in the company, and because it carries off into the personal life as well. They will not click on a link of a personal email that they get, or they'll be cautious about what's on their phone before they open up attachments, and they'll tell their family. That's kind of making it so much easier in the whole scheme of things when everybody is aware and everybody's thinking these things, versus running it down their throats and kind of saying this is the way you're going to do it or else. And I think that's the best way, the best approach, really.
I think that's great advice, John. And you're just a great example of so many people I meet in this industry that are just passionate about helping other people, and not just our companies and organizations and nations, but also in our personal lives to protect people. So thanks for what you do, and thanks for sharing your contributions.
Thank you, Todd. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much.
Wiz is on a mission to help every organization rapidly identify and remove critical risks in their cloud environments. Purpose-built for the cloud, Wiz delivers full-stack visibility, accurate risk prioritization, and enhanced business agility. Wiz connects in minutes using an agentless approach that scans both platform configurations and inside every workload. We perform a deep assessment that goes beyond what standalone CSPM and CWPP tools offer to find the toxic combination of flaws that represent real risk. To learn more about Wiz, please visit securityweekly.com/Wiz.